Hi guys, welcome back to the breakdown. How is everybody doing? Hey Johanna, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Guys, welcome to episode 8. And this one, so here's the weird timing. If for those of you who watched last week, we had a lovely woman on, Leora, who was talking about her healing modality, Akalani. And it was strangely going into a little bit what we wanted to discuss with our guest today. And we had Bella Krystal on before. You guys might remember her from when we were discussing with Ashley on the gene keys. So we're really excited to have Bella back. But it was this really weird, and Johanna, was it just weird the way the timing was? Because we did not plan it at all, like the way it was going on when we were talking to her and she was bringing up, sexual energy and body movement and ancestral drive. And I was like, this is strangely going into like, I think our discussion with Bella. It's like weird timing.
It was a perfect setup. Setup.
It really was. And it was just one of those things on here. So today's episode, guys, we are discussing, so we have it noted as Tantra, but really we're going to dive into other things within the sexual energy, sexual drive. I'm excited for this because I think that, and I don't know if you feel this way, Johanna, but when I hear Tantra, the first thing I think is like, what are all these weird, like sexual, like movements and all of this mean? Like, is this just like for better sex, or is this like, I didn't really know a lot. I was pretty naive when I first knew about it. And then I realized that there was a lot of like breathing, things that you can do, and that it had a lot to do with actually releasing frustrations and trauma. And I didn't know that there was so much healing with it. So it wasn't just connecting with the body.
This episode will probably blow a lot of people away, because if you breathe correctly during sex, it's going to just catapult you into another planet. It's amazing.
So I feel like I need like one-on-one with Bella. She's gonna
I think everybody's gonna want one-on-one with Bella. It's just Bella's nature.
Can you just instruct me on having like better like
just come on over, Bella.
Like connection just here.
Show me.
So here's the thing, guys. Just a little intro on Bella. Bella weaves many paths into one. She threads Tantra and shamanism into everything she does. She's a professional guide. She offers one-on-one coaching, leadership consulting, as well as online courses and memberships. She's empowering people to reclaim their uniqueness, their genius, and purpose by channeling her expertise and mastery with gene keys, human design, and a deep intuition, while pulling all of this together with her tantric connection. It's amazing. I'm so excited to have her on board. So let's bring her on without further ado. There she is. We're so excited to have you on board. And I feel like I finally have a professor here who can teach me a lot of things. You're like my Obi-Wan Kenobi. In so many aspects. So Bella, I have to ask you, what do you feel is the most important thing here in harnessing sexual energy?
I mean, the first thing I would say is that this is what we are made up of, right? So this is the egg and the sperm. This is like what we came from. This is the spark that I say too, the spark that created the universe. So for me, the Big Bang came from Eros, from that spark. Something is dormant and then something sparks. That's like an ejaculation. So for me, that's how everything works. And we can't ejaculate all the time. I mean, we know that. So there are these, like, the universe is built up of those moments of just resting and the void and the kind of feminine. And then we have Eros that comes in and has its creativity and it goes somewhere. And that's the sperm that wants to create life. So these are the principles, like the feminine, the masculine, that I feel the polarities are everywhere. And when we understand that, we see, okay, many of us have forgotten that. And when we forget where we come from, it's very difficult to live completely like in passion and live with direction. So for me, a lot of it is remembering where we came from and how powerful that energy is.
I think that's really profound, and also the fact that because it's almost like instinctive, it's the form of like, listen, these are the things that drive us. Why would we feel? Because I think things obviously mold it, whether it's society or what we're taught, or how we were brought up in our life of being, or maybe feeling shameful or embarrassed. So it's really interesting that these aspects can be a little bit more open, because I even find it too with, and I don't know, maybe it was different because I grew up in a European household, but sexuality in Europe is way different than it is on the West, on Western, that I feel it is. It's more open in that aspect that I've noticed. So I'm not hung up on a lot of stuff as where most people are.
Well,
So
the US is all about shame, man. It's
yeah,
all about, you show a little bit of skin and it's like, oh my God.
yeah.
Mm.
And then we have another whole different realm into it, which is, with our youth, that I find that sometimes it's exploiting more than it is about really understanding. It's like about just getting your desires and not really going into what it is, what's natural. So I'm really curious as to what are some of the techniques, or how you dived into this, or what really, really made you go into this whole loophole of saying, this is what this core healing needs to happen for me.
Right. I mean, I guess I was always in contact with that sexual energy. And I sometimes wonder, I know my mom was very much about allowing the child to grow the way we are naturally. But I'm wondering, because I was a sexual child and I was never taught that I couldn't touch myself. I don't know if they ever found me doing it, but I remember finding a massage, like a back massage device my dad had. And I remember actually bringing myself to orgasm with it. Maybe I was 5 or 6. And I remember showing 2 of my girlfriends. And one was like, oh, this is so cool. Can we go to your place again and use that like super cool thing? And the other one was like, oh no, it's tickling me, like, And it was so interesting to see how already from the beginning. And I mean, I don't think the girl who didn't like it, that she had some conditioning from home. It was just that she wasn't open to that kind of pleasure at that age, which is also completely normal. But for me, I think it was that curiosity of like feeling the body and understanding the sensations. And I grew up like that. And when I was 18, 19, I moved to France. And I remember I spoke French like a little bit. And I remember buying all these books on female sexuality. And I wanted to understand why my girlfriends, they were like saying, yeah, I touch myself sometimes, but I don't know, sometimes I feel something, sometimes I don't. And for me, it was like, I know how to touch myself for pleasure in 2 minutes. Like for me, it was already there so much. And then I think then I was carried away by, an entrepreneur and working with other things. And I found myself going to Sweden to a raw food festival. And I don't know why, but right after that raw food festival, there was a Tantra festival. And I didn't know really what the word Tantra was, like what you were saying in the beginning. I didn't know really what it was.
Right.
But what happened was that week, I was like, this is what I'm about. This is what I do. And it wasn't that I was so excited to learn about it, but I was like, this is how I feel the world. And there was something I had forgotten, because I was a lot about intensity. I mean, I'm half Spanish, half Swedish, and I've always, I moved to France to do Latin dance and all this, like reclaim my Latin side, the passionate side. So what I feel when I started with Tantra, I really reclaimed the whole range. So if we think about sexuality as rainbow, and I really had that kind of fire, intensity, passion. But with Tantra, I learned to also understand the colors that are not so strong. So the feather and the whisper. So for me now, like everything that has to do with pleasure and sexuality is really such a wide range, or a guitar. You have so many strings to play, and many of us have forgotten, or we have got stuck on one tone, whether it comes from like, there are all different reasons for why. But it's so sad to be playing the same tone when we have that whole range.
Do you feel that range is it something that is brought in the level of, I don't know how to describe this. If you have, let's say, a parent who sees something where a child is doing something that seems, not natural or shameful, do you think it's at that point where that child really gets that trauma, if they are, reprimanded, or something happens in that level where it's going to actually bring them more frustration or blockages later in their life?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, and I mean this goes back to our other conversation with also the 7 first years, and where all the memories become cell memories. So basically, whatever happens within a child the first 7 years, the body remembers, and the cells are then replicating that memory over and over again. And then when you are older, you're gonna often like recreate it in a different way, but it still comes from that imprint. So 100% yes.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And do you feel that as an adult, if you find the inkling that you have blockages, and let's say you have somebody new who is working with you, and they explain to you some of their situations or some of the what they are going through that is maybe blocking them, what is your first take on how to introduce something for them to work on? Is it breathing exercises, or is it something that you customize based on however you tune into them?
Yeah, I mean that is also why I synthesize the systems, like we were saying. I use human design and gene keys to look at how the energy flows in their bodies, understand, like you were saying, the imprinting from the first 7 years, the next, like the first 3 7 year cycles, understanding, because we have to understand that sexual blockages or issues are not all the time a physical issue. They can be emotional, they can be mental, they can be a combination. They can come like a kind of behavioral thing, like you're saying, they come from a behavior that was not accepted, and then you recreate from that. So, and we also, I mean, it's a fact that also molestation and rape and these kinds of things are there. So there's so many, I mean, it's almost, I mean, I think it's extremely rare. I think we are all traumatized in some way, whether it's, I mean it's very, very difficult in the world today to have a completely healthy relationships to sexuality, which is also then limiting our intimacy and even the way we can love. So that's why this is also so important, because it's kind of that basic thing that then have so many consequences around it in how we even are in relationships, both with ourselves and with the other.
Well, let me ask you this, Bella, because I have a lot of private mentor students right now that have sacral blocks. And obviously we know that I do trauma and I go into those, first 7 years and beyond, but not everybody's going to be able to hire a mentor or do any of that. Now, I have my techniques for biohacking the sacral. Do you have techniques, if you're not looking at somebody's chart, that they can help? Because I find with all that's going on in the world, people are, they're just, that energy is getting stagnant. They're not moving, they're not creating, they're not, connecting with people.
Yes.
So do you have any tips that you could share with people?
Yeah, I mean, I always go back to the super basic, like sexuality is our animal nature. And this was when you sent me the note as well. This was something I was thinking about. Like, we are humans and we are animals and we're creators. That's kind of how I see the sacral is the animal, and then the human is the heart, and the creator is our mental abilities to create our reality. So when we don't accept our animal nature, we are creating those blocks, especially in the sacral center. So for me, breath, movement, and sound, like you were mentioning it in the beginning, this is really going back to basics. But these are the things that help. And I would say it's not only when you are having sex, like this is in your life. If you're not moving, and I'm not saying running on a treadmill, because that's kind of forcing instead of moving. I'm saying a natural movement, where often we could say, like, if you think about how the universe and creation works, it's like in spirals. Like, I think everything works in spirals. So that kind of natural flow in movement. And sound is not just like singing or speaking. Sound is really using the vocal cords. And I mean, I have lost my voice probably 5-6 times in different trainings that I've been, because there's been so much. I haven't, like, I've been educated to be perfect in that sense. I wasn't educated to be shamed sexually, but the way that I speak, the kind of conditioning I have for perfection and to be able to speak well, like I'm not somebody shouting, screaming, growling. So for me, the connection with the throat center and the creativity of the lower centers has been immense. And also, sometimes when I work with people, like after a session, I find myself like hoping that the neighbors are not going to call somebody, because I need to get it out. But it's not like it's not the pitch is often not high. We forget that. Like the pitch is kind of like, I think about dragon energy. Like sometimes like if we are, our animal nature is like a dragon, and you want to put your tail down into the earth, and then you feel your power. And this is also why the perineum, that is like closer to the anus actually, and that's with both women and men. Like that's for me, if you can tune into that spot between your anus and your vagina, like, or whether you're a penis or a vagina, like just when you sit, if you just become aware of your breathing, you feel your perineum, and you open your chest, like right away you feel more alive. So so these are things like breath, movement, and sound are things that are in breathing. There are a million breathing techniques, and not only the yoga ones where you become like you breathe through your nose and you kind of go to the higher. I would say a lot of breathing through the mouth. That's the feminine breathing. They come down into form, into the body, like involution, instead of just going up to consciousness through the nose and breathing in that way. So really finding the way, just thinking about being more alive. And when we use breath, movement, and sound, and of course they are amazing in lovemaking too, but it's just like, it doesn't start there. It kind of goes there, but it starts with your own aliveness, with your own energy, with feeling your perineum. And then suddenly you might even like, if I tune into my perineum without clenching it, like I can feel the kundalini in my back. And for me, it's easy, but all of us, we have that. And there are therapists too that are helping you, that can like, just with like simple tapping, we can start to feel the energy move. So I wouldn't say we have to do it alone, but it's absolutely, when we add those three things more into our lives, we become more of a human and more of a creator, because we have that base energy coming up through us.
And I mean, honestly, creative energy is sexual energy. I mean, it's just harnessing it a different way. I mean, I'm an extremely creative person. So when I get frustrated, it is part of the same thing. Mm-hmm. It really is. And, I definitely see that connection. So, this, with the movements, the sounds, it's feeling very like ancestral. It almost feels like tribal. It almost feels like it's like when you see, I don't know, even, and I'm just pointing out like one area, but let's say we had like a tribal dance or something in there. There is something sensual about that. It's almost like they're just connecting with their body. Is it as simple as just that, of just releasing and allow yourself just connect to your body and allow those areas? Or are you really defining those specific areas within your body like you had just noted?
I mean, I feel like when there is trauma, and this is, Johanna, more of where you're working too, like sometimes even if when we connect, it feels really uncomfortable, because when we connect, that we are opening up to something that maybe we have our stiffness, we have our not wanting to breathe or feel. So we need to know that when we open up, so that things can come up to the surface, there are things that we might have repressed that we don't want to remember. So knowing that it's not, I mean, I've also like cried sometimes, and that's why you're speaking about ancestral too, because I realized that some of the things I'm releasing are not even mine. And when you are in some rituals too, in trainings, and you can feel like you can feel the cry of the womb somehow, because it's there. It's like, that's where we all come from. And it doesn't matter if it's a collective womb or if it's your own. You're like, we are part of that. That's the oneness again. And this is the cool thing, is that I don't like spirituality as philosophy. Like for me, that is like boring. I like when I can understand it within my body, within my womb, within my sexuality. And sometimes I cry when I make love, and and then my partner would be like, what's wrong with you? And I might say something about humanity, and he's like, can you not just concentrate on us?
But it's true though, because I mean, just from my own experience working with people, is oftentimes when we get down to it, the shame or the guilt that they have that's keeping them blocked, it's not even from anything that was facilitated in their life. It was from their lineage. And so it's really important. I'm really glad you brought that up, because it is having that awareness that if we just like find a safe space and allow ourselves to open up, and that just to have those emotions, just to have that and to be present with it. So I really like that you brought that up.
And how different is it between the sexes? Because I mean, when you have masculine and feminine energy, and to ask, with the masculine, if they're openly crying, whether they're connecting with their feminine energy or not, like that, most guys would probably balk at that. Or be like, oh no, that's not right in society. So how are these things that you interact with when you have, maybe male clients or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I work a lot with, like I said, the feminine, like in the beginning, the feminine, the masculine energy, knowing that both women and men have both. And that's sometimes when we are men, when we are women, we kind of don't want to like really feel the masculine. Although in this world we are kind of conditioned to have a lot of the masculine, but the masculine doesn't want to feel the feminine because that's not what society accepts. So, but for me, it's really important to learn to even discern inside of ourselves that we have those two parts. What I see in men is that like actually there is a lot of men, or different kinds, but like what I've seen lately, men that are afraid of the dark masculine, and they feel like if they go into the animal nature, they are going to want to rape, and it's like that's really important to feel that too, because many men are holding back because they are afraid of their own power, in that sense. So to be able to hold space for whatever is there, and it's going to be different for depending on our conditioning and our energy too. So I feel that's also why I speak about the sacred marriage, and why I feel like the new world is coming through couples. Like I'm not a fan of the sexual work. Like I could definitely be a sexual worker, and I think in my if I'm going to be personal, I think in my personal life it has happened that I've been in a relationship just because I felt this pull that person needed to be liberated, and of course it was something in it for me on a karmic level too, but it feels like I remember almost like another timeline in a temple, and I was a priestess, and I knew that I could do this, like, and I really believe in relationships. So then I actually have to be in relationship with somebody who maybe in a long run isn't the person for me, but I've seen more and more of these patterns. So the way that I see the work that is doing with the armoring and the therapist and the client, I mean, I feel like when you open up for this energy, it's not like, okay, 90 minutes session and now I'm liberated. Like you are opening up life force. It's like you don't take time on that. So that's why it's a little bit dangerous. And also sometimes we become dependent on the therapist, but the therapist just sees you as another client. And it's also important with that boundary, or some therapists don't. And then they become this like weird relationship where we don't really know what it is. So for me, the way that this can really be worked is if you are in a container in a relationship where both partners are aware and that both partners are on this quest of liberation. And we don't even have to say sexual liberation, although I think that is good to have that as an intention in your partnership. Like, what can we open up for creativity? How do you say that?
Creativity. You got it.
Exactly. Like
Creatively.
Creatively, sexually, like it's beautiful to actually state those things and to be there for each other, and to know, like, this is kind of what I say sometimes when you are cooking something in the stove. If you just open it, you have this, like, everything comes out at the time. You're like, you think that the stove heat is going to kill you. And sometimes it is like that. But if you just stand on the side, then you can take out the cookies and they're really tasty. So there's a little bit like that. Like if you have repressed your whole life, and it can also just be, I mean, it can be because because I didn't know here in the States so much, but now there are some people in those states where you can't even speak about sexuality before you get married, basically. And like you said, Tanya, we don't have that in Europe. So I'm learning more about the different conditioning that are there.
Yeah.
So,
well, what if your partner's not aware, though? What if you're there's so many, it's funny, our next topic is going to be on relationships, but what if you're aware and your partner is not? How do you approach this kind of conversation?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, I think that everybody as human beings are interested in sex. Like everybody is interested in sex. So you have to approach it to see, like, how can we either have more fun or become closer or have more intimacy or have more pleasure. Like I feel like this is actually a good thing. If we work with the gene keys like we did last time, and they say, oh, I have this system that has like a million numbers and things, and I want to learn this with you. I can see many partners that are like, oh my God, give me a break. But when you think about making it more and more pleasurable, no, I think,
each their own. I would be in. I'm telling you, if they had
numbers, give them to me.
Give them to me.
And I mean, I think, Tanya, you had a good question in the notes too, that is about harnessing and like, how do we use the energy? Yeah. And this is where, I mean, the first step is, yes, I think your partner is going to be interested, because when we start tapping into our creative energy, we're going to see in all areas of our life that we have more power, but in a good sense. Like we have more energy, we have more aliveness.
Yeah.
The thing is though that we have porn, we have sexual, like different behaviors, addictions, patterns. So there are things that sometimes we need help with. And I mean, I think if you have masturbated porn every day or like 3 times a week for the last 10 years, it's not something that just because you decide you want to use your sexual energy in a more constructive way than destructive way, that's going to change. So I think it's also understanding that there might be things that maybe a couple even needs help with. And for me, I mean, I'm a little bit radical in that sense, because some people are like, everything is okay a little bit, and use it for your pleasure. For me, I don't value everything the same. And for me, anything that is objectifying a body or a woman,
I was just going to ask you, what's your take on porn, on pornography?
Yeah, no, I for me, anything that's objectifying, it's basically that kind of duality again.
Doesn't feel good.
And it's also the sense we were saying in the beginning, like for me, using all my senses sensations are so important, and porn is so visual. That's like from the beginning why I think with men are more visually oriented. That's why we can use lingerie and all these things as women. Right. And it's beautiful because men are kind of like, they are waking up with that. But that's also why when we only use the visual, we forget the senses and we become addicted to that much stimulation visually, and the other senses kind of die. And then what I see with with men that I work with is that now a normal woman, like a body in front of you, is not enough stimulation, or so you kind of go to the extreme instead. And that's sad, because remember how I was saying, I rediscovered the whisper and the feather. And for me to have that whole range and to be able to feel with just a feather, it's something that is so valuable. So when you get stuck on porn, for example, and then you might even try to use to make your sex life look like that or more like that, so that you can have that kind of stimulation.
It's abrupt. It's not like, in my experience, it's like that they just pull techniques from watching, and they're not even like, it doesn't even feel good. You know what I mean? It's not even, you nailed it. There's no sensory. And for someone like me, I don't even have to be touched to have an orgasm. I'm a complete 100% energetic being. I can set myself off, or someone can set me off with just being in my auric field. I don't, you know what I mean? And so if you are being hard and abrupt and forceful, well, I'm really turned off now. You know what I mean? So it's understanding to me, and maybe you know about this and you can talk about this. It's understanding the way that you receive and process sexual energy too.
Yeah, and there is something about courage too, because there's a book I really like, The Passionate Marriage. It's a short book. I have it as an audiobook. It's like 2 hours, and it's a kind of new approach. It doesn't speak about pathology in sexuality. It doesn't come from, oh, this is wrong. It comes from like, how can we do it right? And the way that we can understand sexuality is that in the beginning it's weird. Like even the first kiss or the first French kiss when we're 13, it's like, what, is he gonna put the tongue in my mouth? And then what happens? It's like sexuality is something that is weird from the beginning because we are children and we're not there yet. And then we evolve. So I would say it's really important to understand like where your portal is, where your starting point is, what you feel good for now. But when you are with that couple that is ready to evolve with you and who's ready to maybe seek help to let go of some of the patterns that aren't healthy, like then there is not really any limit. Like you can do things in a low quality with everything, or you can do them in a high quality. So for me, exploration, we are amazing. We can grow as humans. Our heart can grow. We can grow as animals, our sexual being, like our aliveness, the pleasure we can feel, and we can grow as creators. The things how we can create our life and our reality. So for me, in all these areas, we want to go beyond ourselves and beyond ourselves. And for me, there are no limits. And I mean, we can just speak about like something's kind of, speaking about clitoral orgasm, or like finding how many different kinds of orgasm and how much there's actually, how big the whole clitoral network. So the G-spot, and for me, when I started to understand what like squirting or like sacred waters are, like that way, like to be a woman and to be able to feel that and to have a man who can help me go to these heights. Like I'm like the electrical clitoral like peak orgasm now. It's like can be fun, but I also understand how it's actually going in, like when we're stressed, like the way we are in fight and flight, and our sympathetic nerve system is kind of on all the time. A peak orgasm, it might feel like a momentaneous release, but it doesn't make you feel like you're melting, So to understand more, and even men have like, the prostate gland and things like that, like it's so immense what we can discover in our own bodies. For me, the body is the portal to so many things. So I would say to not also fix ourselves. And I think some women that have been treated maybe the way that you're speaking, Johanna, that you had a partner that was into porn and kind of want to objectify you. Of course, you're going to be stiff. You're going to say, okay, this is not okay. Like, you're going to become this because you don't want that whole package. But that's what I'm kind of saying. There are other ways. Like, don't stiff down, because you're not gonna honor yourself by stiffing down.
No, you're just gonna become sexually frustrated.
Yeah, especially, I mean, let's be real, guys. Some of those porno moves, like, they're not realistic.
They're just they're
not realistic of being
to
comfortable
me,
or whatever.
Intimacy is such as opening the well and letting me in. The vulnerability, like, that's the sexiest thing to me. But I'm going to ask you something that's probably ridiculous, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I remember one time, this is before I had my awakening, I was watching some reality show, and there was a guy there, and he said, he was trying to convince his wife to have sex with him. And he said, I have to ejaculate. It's like holding poison in my body if I don't. And I thought, it stuck with me. And I thought, this would be a really good question to ask Bella. Like, what, can you talk about that? Is that a real thing?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm speaking a lot about ejaculation, both female ejaculation, as you just heard, as something more important. Like, my standpoint again is like, I want to take the focus from male ejaculation to female ejaculation, and say that in a couple, it's so much more important with a female ejaculation than with a male ejaculation. I'm not somebody who says men shouldn't ejaculate, but with everybody I work with, I'm speaking about semen retention and about learning how it's not the retention I'm interested in, but that's the term for it. For me, I'm interested in starting to move to circulate the energy in your body. Because when you feel like the animal, the human, and the creator are one, then you can start to use the animal energy in other places of your body. And even scientifically, using the Taoist principles, you can use that energy and regenerate your organs. Like, there are like short things you can do 5 minutes a day. The breathing, how you use the energy, and you rejuvenate your body. And this is not woo woo. Like, this is like kind of it might be like it's real.
It is science.
So for me, I feel like it's about flow. So when men say, "Oh, I'm not going to ejaculate in 2020," I'm like, okay. I mean, that doesn't feel so. Is
that a thing?
Absolutely. But I mean,
I didn't know it was a thing.
Me either. I missed that memo.
I missed that.
No, I mean, it's big. In Tantra, it's kind of a little bit like an expectation, and that's what I don't like.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So for me, it's not a poison. You can learn to use this gold for yourself. I think it is beautiful to be able to choose. So for me, I feel like men, there's so much pressure. We were speaking before, like, men, what they're afraid of, when I said like the dark masculine, but there's so much pressure on men to perform, also because of porn. Like, it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard all the time. It's supposed to perform.
Right.
And that creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of pressure. So for me, when men learn to be on top of their own sexuality, like, I don't want to say like, because again, if we say control, it kind of sounds again like there are expectations.
Yeah.
So that you can choose if you want to ejaculate. You can choose if you don't want to ejaculate. Like, you don't have to be a slave under your genitals. Like, that's like, we are here to use the pleasure, like, to experience pleasure through them. So the more you learn about your genitals, the more you like. For men, there is this like $1 million spot that we are saying, like, it's in the scrotum. It's like it's a point that you can press, and then it kind of, you don't ejaculate. So to start playing with these things and see how amazing you are, how amazing your body is. And for me as a woman, I've many times felt when I'm less with people with I haven't had partners for a while that are big into having to ejaculate all the time. As a woman, I often feel that when there is ejaculation, it stops, and then the lovemaking is over.
Yeah.
And then I mean, the classical thing, then 2 minutes later, the man is snoring. So for me, when
Oh my God, it's so true though.
yeah, so for me, when there isn't that disconnect, and I feel like we are not only circulating the sexual energy in you, but in your, like I say, in your couple, like when you can have that container so that there is a continuous energy flow, and there's not like, okay, now he wants me because he wants to ejaculate, and then tomorrow is going to be less interested or whatever. That's kind of being in a roller coaster. So how can you take responsibility for your energy so that you can be there with your partner? And the
Right.
breathing, like eye gazing, breathing together, microcosmic orbit, like all the things that you can do to be in connection with your partner, and starting to actually, I mean, even making love with open eyes or having an orgasm with open eyes, like that level of intimacy. Like if you're just going to have porn sex or half porn, or like, casual sex with somebody, you can have it with anybody. But when you look somebody in the eyes as you're orgasming, like that's a pretty like intense and spiritual thing. Then you don't just exchange that partner for somebody else. So I think when we start to do that in our intimacy, we are going to be able to create those things where everything can happen. We can hold space for each other in the relationship, in the couple. And as a woman, we can hold space for a lot of things. Like if our man is just like super nervous and he, for example, like premature ejaculation or not being able to perform, like a woman can understand that. But if it's just a frustration, like, there's so many things when we don't share it become a big problem. But when we can see to something we're working on together,
right,
so many things can happen. There's like there are so many more possibilities than limitations.
But you have to feel safe in your relationship. You have to have that intimacy where you are able to communicate that. Because if you don't even feel safe to communicate that piece, then you're not going to get past that. But I want to ask you another question. Sorry, Tanya. You know how this shit happens. What is your take on monogamy and having, or like sleeping around, I should say, because in a shaman's perspective, and I know you know all about that, one thing that I have connected with is what we receive from the partner as they ejaculate from their lineage. And so, and how long that we hold that in our body, especially if we're not really good at alchemizing and transmuting our own energies. So for someone who maybe isn't even understanding all of that, what is your take on sleeping around or, not being monogamous?
Mm-hmm. I mean, first going back to the ejaculation, I think in my life, I've had somebody ejaculate inside of me 4 times in my life. Because I'm not big on actually protection. Like I don't like using condoms because I like feeling the person.
Right.
So I've always had to rely. I was on the pill for 10, 11 years. But as a woman, to be on your moon cycle now for the last 8 years now, I've been like, I want to be a woman. I want to feel the moon. I want to feel my connection to the earth. So I have to rely on other things, but that's also why I don't want to sleep. That's one reason why I don't want to sleep around, because I want to be with a partner that I can trust 1,000,000% that he's not going to ejaculate inside of me, and that also he's not going to be with, like, I'm not going to get sick with some STDs or something, right? So for me, it's like, it's a whole, like, you kind of have to look at all the different aspects, what it is that you value. I feel like sexual experimentation can be a part of our life where we want to be a little bit transpersonal and be like, okay, this is an experience, and maybe we tune in a little bit more to that animal side of ourselves. I don't necessarily think even we need to have penetrative sex. There can just even be like you say, energy beings. We feel other people's energies.
I could go the rest of my life without penetration. just putting it out there.
So, I mean, I think that what I'm really finding out or interesting in this is really there's a difference between connection and just release. So this really isn't about surface relationships. This is about connecting so that you can kind of connect to your own body, right? So what advice can you give to people who might be on the fence of bringing someone in their circle where you have that intimate connection? Is it just working on themselves, getting to know their own body, get comfortable in there before they all of a sudden feel a connection with someone? Or would you give them the advice if they do find that connection to be able to open up to them? Because there's a point of somebody maybe feeling shy. So what kind of advice would you give to that?
I mean, these are times where everything is changing and a lot of things are falling apart. And this goes back to Johanna, what you said too. Like there are relationships that were based on things that you don't value anymore. Like there was a reason for why you got married, but now you don't have things in common anymore. So I feel these are times where we're going to say, okay, we don't have enough for this to continue. The reasons for us being together are not there. The same reasons are not what we value anymore, for example. So I feel these are times to say, is this a relationship that where I can open up and be more of who I am? Like, and I don't speak about selfishness. Like,
Yeah.
I don't like that we are doing like, oh, you're not fulfilling me. I want to be, that's not
Right.
what I'm speaking
Yeah.
about. But seeing that sometimes when we are awakening, we're becoming more than what we were before, and then reevaluating your relationships. And I don't believe in the kind of twin flame the way it was before. Oh, we're going to meet somebody. It's going to kill your soul, but then you're going to awaken through it. Like, I think that's the past. I think right now we're coming into becoming sovereign beings. Like I was saying, we have a feminine side, we have a masculine side. We come into union in ourselves. And then that's the energy field that we are emanating.
Yeah.
So when you have that energy field, like all of us kind of have heard at least about the law of attraction, then you're going to attract a similar field. So that two people that are like kind of, at the same awareness level and whole as at least to a certain point in themselves.
Yeah.
And then that's from where we meet. So that's the thing. I think there are a lot of relationships that are not passing the test anymore, and we want to be honest about with ourselves about that. And if there are kids and things in the picture, of course, like, but I can see how that is. Like, I saw my parents being married too long, in like when things were already broken down, and that has made me repeat some of the patterns that I saw in their relationships. So a responsible way of splitting apart, even for the sake of your children, for me is something that is better than to be together and have children feeling parents that like hate each other or that have no intimacy, or these kinds of.
And children know. I mean, they just know. They can feel so much more than we give them any credit for, with what the environment's like, what they hear, how they see, their parents interacting with each other.
Absolutely.
So I feel like sometimes we don't give children enough credit as to what they actually can feel, or what we think we're protecting them from. We're actually hindering them a little bit more.
You're not telling them anything. They know. They can tell when you're lying. They know what's really going on. But coming back to the whole Tantra or the energy in the body. So going back to kind of like what Tanya was saying, if somebody have this desire, right? They have the desire and they want to, but they have, this shame and this wall or whatever, and they need to be able to, and it's the same thing I tell my clients. It's nothing that you guys, all of you don't already know. It begins with yourself. So do you recommend them working on their body first?
Right. So when there are couples that are already there, where there's a breakdown, I mean, I really, this book, The Passionate Marriage, like I say, I would read that, because it's about, it
We'll
sounds
put that
like
in our description.
old thing, but it's really about easy ways of reigniting, and saying even part of what I said, like there's always more. And it's really about how you can hold on to your own sovereignty and also be more in relationship. And for example, the one thing there, like intimacy, many times we might be able to have sex, but we can't have intimacy. So one thing in the book is like, hug your partner for 10 minutes. It's called like hug to relax. Like, can you hug your partner for 10 minutes? Like, what is going to bubble up in you? Maybe you're going to start to cry. Maybe you're going to start to
feel like I'm suffocating.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you really?
Oh my God, no, I would hate that.
Oh my God, when people hug me, I just melt. I love hugs.
Yeah, but it's like that.
Yeah, everybody's different. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And you see, that's Tantra. Whatever is coming up, you're taking care of it. Do you get angry? Do you get sad? Do you get happy? Like, you can harbor whatever comes up. So things like that. And then for me also, like I said, ice. Like, look at each other when you're making love, and start to connect even without, like, sit with each other and even create a bubble and say like, okay, for like, we're going to do a love making session, and then you kind of create the temple with like candles or whatever you need. And then it's like, okay, what are your desires? What are your fears? What are your boundaries? Because sometimes as a woman, maybe, sometimes we just want to do like I don't even know. Like, it's like, what today are you open for? And then when we already have, again, a container, we can have fun in that container. But then it's not going to be like, oh no, now you touched me there. I don't want to be touched, And then it's kind of like the man is like, oh my God, again. And then he kind of rolls over and sleep. But when we set something that this is what we're going to do, this is what we're going to explore, we have like game. Like, you can't go and play American football. I still don't understand the rules, but with no rules, nobody would be able to play. It's going to be good to set those.
Yeah. So set good boundaries. And if you don't know what you like, then start on your own, right? Start on your own, working by yourself and exploring your body.
And then, like I say, for me, everything is not sexual. I've been in those trainings where you kind of do rituals for a week. I think it's for a week. And you come there and you see people, they come and they're like, shy and they don't know who they are. And then even the first day, it's about it. You start to understand your body, like maybe your body shame. And then like their rituals, the same that we were using in temples in Egypt, like so long ago, are still valid, because and a lot of that is emotional release. Like, really, for me, anything you push down in the emotional body is going to block your physical body. It's going to block your sexuality. So you can't have this, like the energy, like we say, coming from the sacral and going up. So that is important, and that's the voice is part of that. But even finding, like going in the forest, like for me, being in the natural state is connected to your life energy. So it's going to be more easy when you're free to be who you are, to be free as who you are in your sexuality. It just goes hand in hand. I've never seen in these years that it doesn't. And those people that go to those trainings and come out, they look like reborn, like little children. They are playful. Shoot,
they got their color back. They're glowing. You always know. It's like when someone hasn't had sex in 2 years and they walk into somewhere and you're like, you got laid. You know it.
Yeah, no, it's true. Right.
They got a glowing feel for them. So let's I need to step back here, though. I would like to go a little bit into the topic of masturbation, because I feel like a lot of times it's like, not saying it's shameful, but it's like if you don't have a partner, it's like you're exploring yourself. And the aspects of, is it too much to explore yourself? How much should you do it? It's like, is this just a release? Is this just, an aspect of you? If you don't have a partner, are you blocking something because you are masturbating too much? Like, do you see patterns in this with people?
Yeah, I mean, I see that when masturbation is combined with porn, I see that it becomes a crutch for something else. Like, it becomes something that you don't have, so you're substituting it. Or even without porn, when you use it because you're so anxious, so you don't have any other way of releasing, so you need it. So when it becomes something that you need in order to feel okay, then it's like you can use ice cream, or you can use masturbation like for pushing down something else. So that's when I say, okay, that's the extreme limit when we're using it in a sense that it's not always constructive. But everything that has to do with pleasure, like I always I go away from the peak orgasm, because that's speaking about electricity, sexual energy, kundalini, it's electricity. And when you do this, everything's crazy, when you do this, it's like it's like how you did fire before, with this, that you are really using that, you're amping up that sexual energy so much. And when you do that, if you do that many times a day, like, it's not so good for your nervous system, because it's like an electrical system. So I would say take a little bit of intention or focus away from the peak orgasm and more into exploring pleasure in so many different ways. Like, it's really, there's pleasure everywhere. Like, there's pleasure in many places, and also your genitals. It's not only that little clitoris head, it's the whole clitoral network. And understanding, like, even something we call yoni mapping. So yoni is the Sanskrit word for vagina. Like, even just having your partner, like, I see the vagina like as a clock, and then maybe just have your partner like kind of mapping it. Okay, 12, 1, 2, 3, like, and see, what do you feel in there? And sometimes you feel a lot. Sometimes just by like stroking a little bit on the G-spot, like, there can be like this thing that you had no idea was there, and it can be extreme joy or extreme sadness. But when you have a partner, like, as a woman, when you have a partner that's willing to take the time and do that for you, and not only think about his release, like, that's what creates this bond between you and another person. So for me, the pleasure is so important, and it's not only this peak pleasure, but how can you have pleasure Like sometimes when I sit with clients, I have like a warm foot bath under me because it's like so pleasurable to have my feet in the warm water.
You're feeling. So you're really paying attention to what your feelings are. So it's by being able to go through that and releasing that and to allow these feelings to come up, that's where you're pretty much stating the core of your center of creativity is going to come out, your joy, your pleasure, the whole shebang. So what are some examples? Can you give us of how this has helped other people? Like let's say did they have a block and all of a sudden they do really well in business, or like anything like that? Or is it really more like you're just focused on relationships and it kind of like, because you mentioned a spiral effect.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's also why I use human design and gene keys. I don't just say go out in the forest and scream until you have no voice, and then go home, have sex and look your partner in the eyes, that would be cool. But it's like, it's the whole thing. Yeah, no, I mean, freedom, like if you have lived in a relationship where you where you feel repressed, that either your partner had lower libido, how do you say, like lower sex drive than you have, libido, or higher, and you always felt like you were compromising because you're never like on the same level. When you start to reclaim your truth in a relationship and you maybe change your part, like you figure it out or you change partner, like when you in one part of your life have reclaimed your sovereignty and your freedom, it's impossible that you would go to your 9-to-5 job and have a boss that is like telling you to work the whole weekend so you can't go visit your sister or whatever. Like you realize that you're not here to compromise. You're here to be you. And then you just start reclaiming more and more and more. And that's why it's so amazing to start with this part, because this is the most basic. And then from that, like you say, it just spirals up. And I mean, it's like we kind of have to, like, it's easy to speak about it, but I assure you that, when you test it, it works. And
right.
And it's liberation. Like, that's the thing. It is true liberation that comes from starting from the bottom.
That makes sense. I mean, that makes sense. So we dived a little bit into breath work, but are there certain things that you pair together? Is it like body movement and breath work, or is it kind of go hand in hand, or do you just kind of slowly tell someone, we're going to worry about your body right now and just feeling what it feels like to touch yourself, things like that?
I mean, Tantra would say breath, movement, and sound at the same time. So when if you take masturbation again, like many of us, like many people have been conditioned to kind of do it in the bathroom, really quiet and like really fast, So it's the opposite of that. It's like when you do it, can you like take space if you're in your bed or in the bath, wherever you are, and you move your body? Like women, we are like, we have hips that can move, that we can even have like childbirth through. Like open your hips, move your hips, move your chest, start to like breathe, start to make sounds. Like it's together. It's breath, movement, and sound together that are so important. And then I mean, Wim Hof is something I've been doing this last month, because he has those like 10 minutes or 20 minutes things on YouTube. And it's a little bit weird, but like I have the tinglings in my hands, the tingling in my toes. I feel so alive after. So I feel like any exercise that you can include in your life as a kind of self-care, I guess it is. I mean, I feel it's more important to take 10 minutes or 20 minutes to do breath work than to run on a treadmill at this point.
Yeah.
Because I've seen what the difference do with a person.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned Wim Hof. Is he the one who goes out in the cold and is doing the breath work in the cold, and he's doing all this? I watched a documentary on him. I was obsessed. Yeah, I was completely obsessed with his.
He's crazy, but he did it from pain. His wife jumped from the 8th floor, I think, and committed suicide, and he had 4 little children. And he started, like, he was obsessed. He needed to do something, and that's often that the pain is a portal to genius, to something else, when we allow the pain to kind of penetrate us. And then we come out on the other side, and there's something that got born through that process. And that is the womb, kind of that dark place. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting you brought him up, because I literally was thinking when I was trying to get more movement in here, because I live in Michigan, so when it's cold, it's like the dead of winter, and I kept joking that I'm like, I'm just gonna do Wim Hof because I'm like out here in the middle of the cold. Let's just go out there, start breathing, like, because that's what he does. He just goes out there with like barely any clothes on. Does breath
No,
work.
and that's a way of feeling alive. I mean, I don't do the cold thing. I've been
Yeah.
trying to do the cold shower, but in Miami, that never gets really cold anyway. Like, I mean, even the water. So, but that's the thing. Be creative. Like, because this is about creativity. So use your creativity to feel. Like, some people love to do ecstatic dance more and more. Like, I
Yeah,
used to
I
love
love
salsa
to
and partner
dance.
dance. That kind of brings up my Latin side. But some people do those other, like, now there are festivals
belly
even.
dance and
I'll tell you, I have been so drawn to wanting to do anything that's Latin dance related lately, like seriously, or, just like doing the salsa or anything that requires, or even going to Hawaii and moving just whatever I can do to move my hips.
Yeah.
It's like, I just want to move my hips all day long.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with belly dancers. Always have been.
Right.
Yeah, always have been fascinated with that. So yeah, it's the whole, I don't know, it's just something where it feels like tribal. Anything
It
in that
does. It
aspect
feels
where
so
it's
good.
yeah, when people are just moving with the music and their bodies and it just seems natural. It's not anything that feels forced or, especially when it's combined with music. Like it's really there is something that's enticing about it. So yeah, I can totally see that that's what it's all about. Yeah, it brings that in there. I can't believe we are already almost up on time here. Like, I don't even know where time goes. Time flies on our show.
I mean, this is another thing I just have to say. Like, if you ask your partner to like sing or hum into your clitoris, it's like it's actually really interesting. Because sound, like, didgeridoo and these things are like things we use for energy work, right? So even that kind of thing, to hum into the genitals, there's so much we can do. So that's the thing. Don't take it so seriously. Have fun with it. Don't be so stiff. And if you really feel
take the stick out of your butt, people.
If you feel you're coming up against something that's too painful, there is help to seek out there. I mean, I think that one session with somebody to kind of just understand what you're dealing with is, that's the same money you spend on something else. Like, for me, this is core things. Like, if you can open these doors to your own aliveness and to your own creativity, you're going to make that money and so much more back,
Yeah.
So
yeah. What would be your advice for those who have a partner who isn't quite lined up with them in this openness of being expressive, or they're not there yet, but they still want to work on it? What kind of advice would you give to them? Would you just say, focus on you and see where that aspect comes first before you really what's authentic to you, as if you stay with this person or not? Because that's what it comes down to, is what authentically feels right to you.
Yeah, I mean, hold on to your own truth and don't compromise that, and then communicate from that place, because in relationship, communication is the most important thing. And then, like, you're going to know, if you're in tune with yourself, you're going to know when there is this impasse, when you can't do it anymore. And then it is to be responsible of like how to organize your life or how to separate if you have a family and all that. But really, we have to stop compromising our truth. It doesn't mean we have to be selfish. That's not what I'm saying. But like, really, because when you do that, it's like everything that you attract in your life, again, is going to be a compromise. And that's not worth it.
Right. No, that makes sense.
Exactly.
For sure. So I have your group up here because it's getting close to time here. I have the Facebook group. It's called Tantra Connection Community, and this is you can tell me a little bit about it. And you also have your Instagram group here too, called Tantra Connection. So I have all of that information in the description box below. But if you want to chat about it a little bit.
Just saying, this is for beginners, for people that really don't understand what, sacred waters are, because that feels too weird, or like non-ejaculation, or, so this is like really for the mainstream person that's a little bit interested in getting more connected to themselves and to their partner and to life. And there are no stupid questions, really. Like today, I think we have all kind of been like a little bit goofy, laughing together, because this is the way to approach it. No questions are stupid, and we to speak about it in a way and speak about our own experience makes it approachable, like, so that we all have the courage to speak about these things, because this is our animal nature. It's like so much of what we are. So let's just put the cards on the table and reclaim pleasure, reclaim intimacy, and reclaim truth in our lives.
I love it. Sign me up. Well, we appreciate you being on here, guys. Just a reminder for next week, because I can't believe we're going to be in July. I don't even know how did this month fly? I know it's her birthday month, and we're going to have to hear that in every episode for July.
Good morning,
birthday. But our next episode, guys, we don't have a guest. It's just going to be us, but we're going to be breaking down relationships. So we're going another step further into this discussion. So it's just going to be us. And then we're going to the following week have a sound healer on. I'm really excited for Suntara on here. So Daniel's going to be on. And we really appreciate, Bella, you being on here.
Thank you.
All right, guys. You guys have a good week. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.